Hi, Hal. Thanks a lot for joining us today.
My pleasure.
It's been, 17, 18 years that Google was founded, and soon it may become a trillion-dollar company. What is the recipe of that success?
Well, people think that we've found it easy to hire people because we've been so successful, but it's really the reverse is true. We've been successful because we've been able to hire great people. And part of this success actually came from the dot-com bubble in 2000, where there were a lot of very talented people with lots of experience, lots of skills, and they were willing to work for options. So we did very well in hiring those people, and they're the ones that really brought the company to its takeoff point.
Yeah, and you have talked about this previously also about ingredient and recipe and how important for Google the ingredient is. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Well, lots of people have emphasized the importance of data.
Yeah.
Okay, data is important, but what really matters is what you do with it. And I sometimes express that by saying it's not the ingredients that are the critical issue, it's the recipes, the algorithms, analysis, the business decisions that come from looking at that data and analyzing and understanding it. So I sometimes say if the evil aliens came down from above and they took all of our data, well, we'll be up and running again in a few weeks. But if they came down and took our engineers, we'd be in really deep trouble.
Yeah, I want to come back to the culture, if you will, of Google, which is incredible, very open, very transparent. How have you guys kept that very open culture, again, from a company that was this big to a company that is that big, right?
Well, we like to think it's unique, but I'll tell you, you go into a Silicon Valley company these days and it looks a lot like Google because a lot of other companies are trying to capture that same quality that is contributed to Google's growth. So it's kind of the secret sauce, or maybe not so secret sauce out there in Silicon Valley. You just have to focus on it. That's it. You have to do it deliberately. It doesn't spring up by itself. It could easily melt away. So it requires constant attention.
Fascinating. Yeah, and another thing, Hal, is again the concept of big data. In my opinion, it has changed how we do business overall. What do you see going forward with big data, partnerships, Google, others? How do you see it?
So when we encountered this big data problem back in the early 2000s, we had to build all of our own systems that could manage these massive amounts of data. But now those systems have become open source, they've become available through data centers from Google and from Amazon, from Microsoft, everywhere. So these things that took us so much time and energy and cost to build have now become completely commoditized. So I like to refer to this as a democratization of data because the data is available to everybody now, and the tools that you need to analyze it are available to everybody. The tricky part is the expertise.
Indeed, it is. We are talking about Google, but Alphabet is the company now. How does Alphabet and Google fit in? And what is the model behind making Alphabet as the parent company?
Well, when we looked at our business as a whole, we saw there was a core business with search and ads, and then there were these other pieces. Some of it was Internet of Things, some of it was the driverless cars, some of it was X, and so on. And we decided we should have an organizational structure that fit that heterogeneity better. And we have two big bets. I mean, I have several bets, but two that stand out are the driverless cars on the one hand and cloud computing on the other hand. And it seemed appropriate, I think the right decision to split those off as separate entities, but they could still draw on some of the core technology strengths from Google.
You know, Hal, another thing that I have noticed is that if I just drive around Mountain View, I see so many driverless Waymo cars. And again,
they see you.
And they see me. That's another thing. So it's the innovation where Google is right there. What do you think about the driverless car? I mean, an amount of data that is collected in there. What do you think about that?
Well, people forget that the driverless vehicles really started as a program from DARPA, and they invested 10 years and several different universities to develop this capability. The real breakthrough came when Larry and Sergey went to visit the Stanford program and said, gee, I wonder how this would work if we hooked it up to Street View and Google Maps. And that made a big difference. So now the driverless cars are not only collecting all this information about road conditions and anomalies and things that might be problematic for themselves, but they're collecting it for all the other driverless cars. So you've got this whole web of data which can now be used to help people get around in the world.
Talk to us a little bit about the cloud. Cloud seems to be, again, not too long ago, Sundar talked a lot about how important cloud is, and potentially at some point cloud could be the biggest business for Google. How do you see cloud evolving?
Well, as we built up the company, we ran into lots of problems in data management. We ran into problems on data analytics. We had a lot of challenges, and we solved those for our business. But now that we've created all those tools and all those mechanisms, it's quite apparent that other companies need those same services. So that's why we have cloud. Cloud is out there because it allows this kind of democratization of data, which means that anybody can access those tools and services and capabilities now. And that's a great business for us, we expect.
And what do you think about the macroeconomic conditions that are taking place? You as an economist, overall, for a corporation like Google or Thomson Reuters or others, how does it affect? We are seeing, would it be different for corporations to do business the way they were doing, or is it status quo?
Well, I just actually came back from a meeting in Washington with a number of economists looking ahead of what things look like for the next year or two. And I must say, everybody was surprisingly optimistic because growth rates seem to have picked up in the US. There's some wage increases going on. Europe is seeing signs of life. So I would say the near-term future looks pretty good. Of course, there are a lot of risk factors out there too, so we need to be concerned about those. The factor that I think is underestimated, but is very apparent when you look forward a few years, is demography. The baby boomers are now retiring. We come to the baby bust. The labor force is growing at half the rate of the population growth, and next decade it'll grow at the lowest rate ever. So there's a real issue, which in some sense is good. It means that we're going to see tight labor market for the next 20 years or so. And that's going to be a change. People will change their attitudes about how they think about the economy when you've got this strong demand for workers.